Can't make this one up. One of the biggest critics of Indiana's religious freedom law was Apple CEO Tim Cook. You might remember him writing this op-ed. He says, Apple is open to everyone, regardless of what the law might allow in Indiana or Arkansas. We will never tolerate discrimination. Remember that line. What he doesn't mention is all the business Apple has done in countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, places where homosexuality may be punishable by death. We also have Nigeria up there, as well as the UAE. So what is exactly with the selective outrage of Apple and other companies? Joining us now, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. Happy Easter to you.
Same to you.
It's shocking that you would think that Apple in one side says this is terrible, boycott, we can't believe this outrage, and at the other hand they're selling Apple products in countries where this happens. Why is there not equal outrage?
Yeah,
or does money
fascinating.
talk?
Look, with all this unfolding during Holy Week, it's a really important conversation. And Americans finally, toward the end of that outrage over Indiana, realized that there was almost a bit too much. It was a bit, it was horrifying. So what we're seeing now, and this is one of those silver linings, is looking at an issue like this, where there is such a level of hypocrisy, you begin to have to wonder, especially for those of us who do care about, which is every American, human rights, the rights of Americans to live lives as they see fit. And you see that kind of an op-ed that you noted from Tim Cook, who came out as gay, as the head of Apple, saying, taking this sanctimonious, self-righteous attitude about Indiana, right?
Yeah.
And we know now that, of course, Apple is doing business in countries where it is not safe for people who are different, certainly not for homosexuals, not for women. Right. And we know Saudi Arabia's record. Look, in Saudi Arabia, you're lashed if you're a woman and you've been a rape victim.
Right. We haven't heard from Tim Cook about that. One of the other interesting countries, though, that this brings up is Iran, in the sense that there was sanctions against Apple products up until last year. The sanctions were lifted against Iran. But look at Iran's human rights record. The Wall Street Journal says that despite all of this, Apple wants to get, in 2012, a pastor imprisoned for 8 years simply because of his Christian faith.
Right.
July 2014, Washington Post reporter was imprisoned as well. They've been known to execute gays in Iran.
Yes, publicly.
Publicly execute them, 500 people under the death penalty, and yet Apple says, oh, gee, we'd really like to get in there.
Well, Obama did lift communication sanctions, allowing companies like Apple to sell their product in Iran. And Wall Street Journal's reporting in November of last year, they were interested in starting up that Tehran business. So it seems a little hypocritical when you have an op-ed piece saying we're not going to tolerate, intolerance, and yet that's a place that they're comfortable going into. It's quite extraordinary.
And that's not the only company that's being accused of this. You've got Walmart, who came out against the Arkansas law. They do business in China. You've got Gap and Levi's that also have stores in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They came out talking about what's going on in Arkansas and what's going on in Indiana, yet they're more than happy to take money from the countries that certainly discriminate on a much grander and rougher scale.
Here's what I would encourage everyone who watched that circus last week is that ask questions for especially young people, gay people, are we being used as pawns in a political framework? Is what Tim Cook is doing, is that a thank you for Obama lifting the communication sanctions on Iran? What is the political angle here? We have a presidential election coming up, and for those of us who care about consistency and human rights, we've got to hold these people accountable for when they use people in our important issues to make political points, because it's unacceptable.
Well, to your point, it's always right to ask the questions. Tom Brokaw once said, it's never the questions that get us in trouble, just the answers.
That's right.
And obviously there's some companies with some tough answers coming up.
Yeah, we got to ask some questions, and I'll be curious to see what Apple has to say coming up here about Iran, especially.
Well, especially if they actually say anything, or more importantly, perhaps pull their products and say, we're not going to do business in that kind of country.
If they suddenly, if they think they're going to have a quiet rollout in Tehran, or they're not.
We'll see what happens. Coming up next, Tammy, thank you very much.
Happy Easter.